humans aren't resources, right? Because I think the word HR is quite disgusting. Don't grow your garden in someone else's yard. There's this black box that exists in design. Are you willing to be the first one to sort of lift that black box up? Like, the importance of culture has never been more important for branding, whereas like brands in the
Never Work a Day talks to folks that are pivoting their lives to follow their passions. We talk about pitfalls, misadventures, hilarious and heartbreaking, meet the outstanding individuals, and learn about their continuing journey. I'm your host, Nikki Frankel, purveyor of platforms and creator of play spaces, and I'm so excited to bring you the stories of these extraordinary individuals. Our guest today is Paul Jun. Here's a bit of information about him. Number one, he has a BA in psychology. Number two, he wrote Connect the Dots, Strategies and Meditation on Self-Education. He wrote a bunch of other books, too, we'll hear all about. Number three, he was the head of content at Creative Mornings, the world's largest creative community, and then moved to be the editorial director of Collins, which is an award-winning brand and design agency. Number four, co-founder of The Observers, an online publication featuring visionaries in photography and photo books that inspire their work. That publication is no longer around, but I think it's inspiring. Number five, as a brand director and principal creative director, he's worked with Match, Robinhood, Clubhouse, the San Francisco Orchestra, Mixpanel, and Persono. Now here's Paul. Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I know, this is really exciting. I haven't talked to you in like a lot of years,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I know.
yeah.
The last time I saw you was at the last conference for Adobe for 99U?
Yeah,
Was
that
it?
feels like ages
What year
ago.
was that even? Was that like 2017?
17, 18? It was
Yeah.
like a couple years right before COVID.
Yeah, and I would be in the dark theater of Alice Tully, and then every time I would come out, I would see you.
Yeah.
And
Somehow, I'm just
somehow I'd
there.
be like, "Oh, hey, Paul, what's up?" And I'd have a headset on, and I'd look really busy.
That's
although I
it.
just
You're
probably
orchestrating.
I usually just needed to go to the bathroom. That was like honestly all that was happening when I ran into you. So it was nothing. It was nothing crazy. What were you doing during that conference when you were you running? You were doing Creative Mornings. I know that.
I was doing Creative Mornings. So
Were
there
you
were
guys
t-
doing
there were-
interviews?
No, so there were two times actually. So it was Creative Mornings. I was there with the team.
Yeah.
And then the second time I saw you, I was at Collins, the agency, and I was working with Brian. He was giving a talk on one of the stages.
Brian was, yes, I remember that now. That's so funny.
Yes.
Okay, all right, because Brian is a huge personality, which
Yeah.
we can talk about.
Yeah.
Well, so Paul, I'm so glad you're here, and you've designed so many things, and you're such a brand expert, and you have so much writing.
Oh, thank you.
And I wanted to talk a little bit, well, so first off, we'd like to do origins of everything, that you are a writer.
Yep.
That was your initial, well, you went to school for psychology, and then you started writing about things? What's the trajectory?
So I actually majored in journalism because I thought that's what I wanted to be because I loved Hunter S. Thompson.
Oh, so do I.
Love.
Oh my God.
Like I was like, Gonzo journalism.
Were you going to go be a Gonzo journalist?
That's what I wanted.
Okay.
And first week of class, go to journalism class. I raised my hand and I asked the professor, "What do you think about Twitter?" And he like waves me off. He's like, "It's a fad. It'll die." I left that class, found my guidance counselor, and was like, "I'd like to change my major."
Really?
And they're like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Because I don't think your program is ready for the future."
Well, do you know what's funny about that is that journalists still sort of feel that way about tech, actually. So that was just
But like now the journalists that I follow all became who they are because of Twitter.
Right.
Right? Like
They got their voice.
Like the Taylor Lorenzes of the world, the Matthew Iglesias, like they built it on Twitter.
Yeah.
They were at a major establishment and now they're all sort of doing their own Substacks.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
I remember I left that, went to my guidance counselor, and I picked psychology because she was like, "Oh, like, why don't you just go into like an English major? You want to be a writer." And I was like, "But if I go into that major, you're going to make me write things that I don't want to write about."
Correct. That's what English majors do.
So I would
too.
actually rather learn about the human condition that then informs my writing versus being told to go write 14th century literature reviews. Like,
Agreed.
I just don't care about that. So, and then that was also a moment in my life where I was very lost in college. I was failing, I had like a 2.1 GPA for years. Most people finish college in 4 years? It took me 6 years to finish college because I had to, when you get Fs, you don't get credit for the class. So I had to retake
So
courses.
everybody knows that now. If you
Yeah.
fail it,
It's okay.
it doesn't count.
Yeah.
But it's also okay.
Yeah,
Because you
but
can just
you
do
just
it
got to
again.
retake it, and
Just
it,
take it again. Just rebuild.
Luckily, my student loans weren't too crazy back then. But at that time, I realized, you know what? I want to be a writer. I saw what bloggers were doing on the internet. I was like, I want that life.
Yeah.
So I told myself I'm going to get straight C's. I respectfully told all my professors that, so they didn't think I was some like jerk off kid just like skipping class every other week.
So,
And instead, I went to the library and I read a book or two a week. I wrote 2 to 4 thousand words every single day, and I just kind of like rewired my brain on my own. I obviously couldn't drop out of college. I have like an old school Korean father, try telling him that, hey, I want to go be a blogger. And he's like, yeah, go fuck yourself. Like, get back to
yeah,
school,
right.
So it's just like, and so that's how it happened. Like, it was really opportunity cost. It's like, I'm not going to get my master's in psychology to be a psychologist yet. I can't drop out of college. So what can I do with my time instead that's going to develop me a useful skill?
Yeah. What did you write when you were writing that much? What were you writing
The
about?
the
Was
books
it?
I was reading.
Oh, really?
So in another life, I admire people like Maria Popova from Brain Pickings.
Yeah.
Like that life of where she literally built an audience that is extremely intellectual and loves books and loves curiosity. Like she just writes about the books that she read. And I thought, oh, I could just do that. Like,
Yeah.
because like when I tried to like write with more authority on topics that frankly I didn't have the authority on. I remember a writer kind of like gently called me out and was like, "Hey, like you're writing about like really big things." And
Yeah.
he's like, "I don't think you have the life experiences to back that up. You're kind of just copying the Seth Godins of the world, but you're not Seth Godin."
Yeah.
And I really needed to hear that. And he's like, "Maybe you just talk about the things that are really relevant to you."
Yeah.
Because I think I was really good at seeing what was considered successful out in the marketplace, but essentially I was a fraud. Like I didn't have any business writing about the shit that I was writing
Well, it was
about.
just opinion based.
Right. It was
Yeah.
purely opinion based, and luckily,
And and you would research your opinion and
yeah,
right. And
yeah,
that's so it was never anything that was I'm trying to write fiction, I'm trying to
yeah.
write poetry. It always was sort of observational,
Yeah,
right?
and then over time, it wouldn't just be like I read a book about, let's say, decision making. I would then start thinking about bigger themes, and then I would try to connect multiple insights from multiple books into one larger theme, and then that helped me think about ideas or topics from different angles that I normally wouldn't approach it in. So suddenly, in a year, let's say I'm reading 12 books about neuroscience in the brain. And, for some reason, I'm thinking about how brands affect our lives. Now I can approach it philosophically, psychologically, scientifically, anthropologically. Like I can look at it through all these different lenses
Mm.
that I never had language for. And that's what like my blog was about. It was called Motivated Mastery. I had it for like 10 years. I shut it down right like during the pandemic.
I mean, was it about well, yeah. But before you did that, was your blog and your book, you have a paperback that's
Yeah.
still, yeah, called Connecting the Dots. And I have to look at my computer to read all of the things. Connecting the Dots, history, psychology, creativity, strategy, philosophy,
All the
leadership,
things.
art, design, and storytelling. Are all the subheaders.
Yeah, all the things.
Strategy and the meditations on self-education.
Yeah.
I mean, I think self-education is kind of the way to go in a lot of ways in terms of
Absolutely.
just, you're curious about something, you dig into that topic because I don't really think standard education really gives you enough to be able to go on. As somebody that wasn't the most amazing student, but was told when I like something, I'm good, which is like, isn't that everybody?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not, I sort of was self-taught in a lot of ways too, and just would follow what I was interested in,
Yeah.
which is what we all do. But your book, Connecting the Dots, you just said it also, that you found these ways to connect things together. Did you feel like there was enough of a through line or a thesis around that you wanted to write it out as a paperback?
Yeah,
Right?
like I grew up in the suburbs. Like a lot of the paths that people thought were available to them were actually like not limited in a bad way. It's just like, it just tech companies were not talked about. Startup worlds were not talked about. Design, like what the hell is design? Like I didn't know what that was. All my friends growing up, they were either going to take over a family business, go work at some giant bank,
Yeah.
or go work at some giant corporation like Verizon,
Right.
right?
It was carved out.
It was carved out, and like, I'm over here like a caveman, like acting like I discovered fire for the first time. I'm like, look, it's the internet. Like, it's like you can take free courses from MIT and Harvard, or you could go buy a Skillshare course for $20 a month and have access to all these experts and teachers. Like, I kept thinking while I was in college, and I talking to peers, like, I felt like I was the only one that saw the value of it.
Yeah.
Whereas everyone was like, yeah, cool, buddy. Like, who the fuck is this person?
But it wasn't
Why would I
valued at
care?
the time.
It wasn't. It
Yeah.
wasn't. And I think that was the main thing that was wrong with my book, Connected Dots, was I assumed that if you just showed people the possibility and the access to what was available compared to what your parents never had
Yeah.
and their ancestors never had, wouldn't you be inspired to act on it?
Right.
Actually, the thesis was quite opposite, is no, they wouldn't act on it. Not everyone.
No.
Because it's much safer to do the thing that culture tells you is the right thing to do.
That's-
right. And for what it's worth, like, I'm sure a lot of people led great lives, through that path and got wealthy early. Like, they own a home, whatever.
Sure.
But
Much
for
more
me-
financially stable.
Right. Like, but for me, there was this gnawing internal sense that I was just like, this is not the path for me. I need to get the fuck out of here. Like, I need to figure out a way to, like, be useful and, I don't know, build a life somehow.
That's different than, that's different.
So
than
it
all
was
the
a
rest
big risk. But it got to a point in my life where, I just couldn't ignore it, because it was literally like, if you ignore these feelings for too long, it's going to literally fester
Well,
into,
that's going
like,
to give you a heart attack eventually.
literally.
Yeah.
Like, literally health
Yes.
problems come out of
Yeah,
this.
absolutely, because it's so much
Um,
anxiety and
yeah.
So it's good you averted that early,
Yeah.
even though you realize most people didn't care about connecting the dots. They just
Right.
wanted to, like, go to work and get a paycheck and whatever,
it.
buy a house or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But probably it appealed to some people in the industry because you started probably making connections through that, did you? Or just because you have Seth Godin, who you already mentioned.
Yep.
It's for those that don't know who Seth Godin is. Do you want to give a touch of a bio
So
for him?
I love that man. So Seth is he's arguably one of the most like legendary marketers in the world. He wrote over 20 best-selling books. He coined terms like permission marketing,
Which we're going to ask about later.
Yeah. And he has a blog that he's been writing on for over 25 years consistently. How I met him was while I was in college. He put out this blog post saying, hey, I'm inviting 20 college students to my office in Hastings-on-Hudson. And for 3 days, I'm going to basically teach you kind of what I know and how I see the world.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where permission marketing, building an audience, having a practice, all these things I learned through him. And for so long, his worldview was essentially became my operating system.
Well, it probably just kind of opened up a whole new
my
world
God.
for you, right? If
Literally.
you kind of saw that it was sort of there, you saw it completely differently once you see it. From that
Yes.
perspective, right?
It was everything I needed to hear and everything I wish college students could hear from someone like Seth.
Yeah.
Because while, yes, you have to put in the work and it's going to be hard, the opportunity and the possibility is just so rich.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And also, but once you also know the marketing exists, then you can't really look at the world the same way.
Yeah.
Necessarily. I mean, I grew up, my father was a madman and he was in advertising. And I was being advertised to from a very young age, immediately, as soon as I woke up in the morning. So I knew I knew about advertising. So I was onto it from a very young age about it. But if it's not something, and I was aware of design and what design was doing and the systems of all of that, if that's not something you came up with on your own, that's not what then seeing it all unfold, it looks like, a huge mechanism, right?
I remember the last day, right? We celebrated and we're having lunch and I'm on the train heading back to the city. And I'm just sitting there going I remember the words in my head were I can't go back, meaning I now see a future that I cannot ignore. And there's absolutely no way I can go back to a safe path, a traditional path.
Yeah.
I have to put in the work and grow mastery and grow the muscle and the skill and just commit and just keep shipping things and making useful things.
Yeah.
I remember so the Connected Dots was actually my third self-published book.
What was the first one?
So the first one, it's so
Because I couldn't find the fight.
Oh, it's completely hidden. It's
no.
probably so. So I'm like second year, third year of writing. I am again like a caveman who discovered my own voice, and I'm fascinated by the power of language. Again, my brain is being rewired at this point. And so the first book, it was only like a 50-page ebook. It was just literally like for me to push myself to get something out in the world and just like get over that fear. It was called Building an Empire with Words.
Oh,
And it literally
lofty.
like, yeah, very lofty, like, but it basically like the essence of it was like your words matter, and like the stories you tell yourself shape your behavior and your actions. But like obviously to like any normal college student, it's kind of like, yeah, no shit, buddy.
Yeah,
But
but
but for me it was like something I really had to profoundly understand.
you should reissue that book.
I know.
It's very appropriate
Yeah.
for right now.
Yeah.
Just saying.
And so
Resonates.
that was so okay. I did all these things. I go to Seth's thing. That really solidifies it for me. Like, okay, I'm taking this path.
Yeah.
That then sends me down basically a rabbit hole of like building a portfolio, having a
Well, we're at
blog.
that point
Like,
were you a writer though, right? You
yeah,
were still a
yeah.
writer. So where did your design, because you then, I mean, the 99U-ness of it all,
Oh my God, yeah.
um, in terms of, and for those, and the 99U is a Behance conference. Behance is owned by Adobe. So there was a lot of artists involved in that conference.
Yes.
And it was a lot about design, particularly graphic design.
Yes.
But did that tip you into design? That,
For
it felt
sure.
like, right?
Yeah, so shout out Jocelyn K. Glai and Sean Blanda.
Oh,
Like
shout out
they were
OG.
the OGs of 99U.
Yeah.
They were the architects of that publication. That publication probably did more for creative careers during that time than any university. I'm like willing to say that.
That
Um,
publication was, yes,
it was
hugely supportive.
incredible because like
Yes.
you had real practitioners writing from the heart about things that you couldn't read anywhere else, right? And I went there mostly just from like a writing perspective, but then as a curious person who literally would just read everything in front of me, that's when I started learning about design. That then opened my world to like, wait a minute, like design is not just pixels, it's so much more than that philosophically. Then that exposed me to different styles of design or expressions of design,
Uh-huh.
and then I started realizing, wow, this is all connected. Like
Yeah.
it's not these like hard lines of I'm a writer and I'm a designer. It's like no, you can be both, right? And
Yeah. I mean,
like
and and it's helpful to be both. It's
it's
helpful.
helpful to be both.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like it enhances each other. And so that was honestly like the first probably time where then honestly like that sent me down another rabbit hole of like now read every design book in the
Everything about
library.
design that you can possibly
And now
find,
like
right?
learn all about the legends, the Charles and Ray Eames of the
Oh, I
world, the
mean, there
Paul
was
Rands, the
huge, right?
and then that made me go, why didn't I learn this in school? Uh and what are these lives that these people lead? I was so fascinated. Like I just didn't grow up around people like this.
Right. Yeah. And
And
so that
so,
creativity that you could tap into, and that it really,
oh,
because it's also the storytelling around that too,
yes,
right?
yes.
Did you have a first project that you designed? Is there something that was like, or something that you added design to that you feel like,
Honestly, my personal blog was probably the first time I hired, shout out my friend Christina Zemek. First time I like hired a freelance designer, sat with them, told them about my vision, thought about typography and spacing and line height and weight. And I'm just going there like, wow, this is a skill. Like this is the language that I
and
could
this also
learn,
speaks a lot. I mean, yeah,
you
it's a,
know?
yes, it is. It's a
Yeah.
huge language that you can put
Designing a
together.
book cover.
Yeah.
Like my friend Laura Sly, like she did it for free. Luckily, like I had nice friends who would like trade, skills, and like she designed the book cover, and like we even made like a light animated like film where like I did a voice. Like it was just so new to me. It
Yeah,
was
there's so
so
much
like
there.
incredible to even experience that. Wow, I never thought of it that way. Like you just opened up, like unlocked some core memories.
Oh, amazing.
Like I'm
I'm
serious.
so glad it's just all
amazing.
flooding back to you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so this is this is kind of really exciting because you kind of opened up this whole category to yourself, and you're just like endless learning around that. I mean, because
Yeah.
that's really exciting because it all informs everything else. And then you are now just fast forwarding, just like just fast forwarding on that. You are now a creative director and you're sort of a brand director
Yeah.
from this, right? So coming, because I mean, yeah, I think what do you and you are in positions, senior positions, and
Yeah.
looking at brands now. So coming sort of thinking of your origins and where you are now, do you feel like there's any? Do you feel sort of that same excitement around the work, or do you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I guess like a quick TLDR is like I built like so from 99U days, that was like portfolio building, right?
yeah.
Like before I even graduated college, I could send some a job employer 5 articles that I was really proud of for a known publication, and that literally got me a good job right before graduating college
I
at
mean,
like a SaaS company, remote startup company,
that's
right?
fantastic.
And
Yeah,
like writing like doing content marketing, like that was my foot in the door.
yeah.
um and then over time, like that evolved. I worked with Seth, built the All MBA with a small team. That was an amazing experience because that was the kind of first of
Well,
its kind.
did you end up taking a lot of this? You built a lot of communities, right? Like you
That
sort of
too.
built out the community because that's what you did with Creative
Yeah.
Mornings, which is also an amazing resource.
Yeah.
That you were a community manager of that. I mean, did writing and design inform how you build a community? Was it all
Oh,
about how?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Like, it probably wasn't obvious at first, like, especially in the context of Creative Mornings. Like, so that was after all MBA. So I moved out of Jersey, moved to
not to skip
Brooklyn,
ahead.
started this life. And that was obviously a community that started for designers because Tina is by trade a designer. She started it because she wanted to be closer to the design community in New York City, right? Other conferences were just really inaccessible. Then over time that evolved into obviously like photographers, architects, storytellers,
You blew it.
poets.
Yeah, you blew it
It
out.
just completely it was like that's why they say,
Well, when you
everyone is creative, everyone is welcome.
exactly.
But design is at the heart of that organization and community, and a lot of the organizers are like experts in design. And so that opened me up to a whole universe of different designers in different countries,
Right.
different inspiration. Like, there is such a now being in this world, like there is absolutely like American design
Yeah.
and like designers like living in LA or New York City versus someone living in Sao Paulo versus someone living in Berlin.
Yeah.
Like we all share similar things, but where you start or what you're inspired by, man, I just learned is so different.
It's vast.
Different starting points, different
Absolutely.
inspirations of where you're pulling ideas from.
Yeah, I mean, and because you started when Creative Morning started, it was just New York based, but now it's now an international. Did you
Yeah.
build it? Were you part of building that the
No, no, no,
international
no.
community
So
of that?
by the time I joined, I think they were in like honestly over 150 cities.
Yeah,
But by the time I left, we were in over 225 cities.
yeah.
And so I was the head of content. I basically managed like I had front row seat into hundreds of events every month, the different kinds of talks, the different like pulling quotes and
And you
inspiration.
were taking content from all of those different, just to kind of pull
Yep,
it out and put it on the site.
repackaging it in a weekly newsletter that was
Yeah.
read by 250,000 people every
So
week.
interesting. So how did you kind of know or assess would you have to follow trends? Would you just kind of go with your gut? What would be the things that you would?
Honestly, it was pure gut based.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
people asked me like, how do you, because the weekly highlights was probably one of my first major successful projects where I turned that into like an actual thing that brought people to Creative Mornings.
Yeah.
The way I thought about it was there are so many people who cannot attend an event, but
True.
they want inspiration and they
Yeah.
want to feel like they belong to this community.
Yeah.
This newsletter is one of many ways to make them feel like they get to have a fingertip pulse on what's happening.
Well, that's pretty
right?
important though, right? Because you look around, you try to
Yeah.
figure I still try to find out what's happening at Adobe Summit or
Yes.
whatever, and you
Yes.
just pull whatever you can
Yes.
so that you know. But there's a lot of sort of cloak and
Yeah.
dagger about these
Yes.
events, which is
Yes.
weird
Yeah.
because why not open up the conversation? It doesn't
Exactly.
make any sense.
So like curation was I wouldn't have called myself a curator, but there was something about that practice that
Absolutely.
I had to learn and also start to really like, there were times where like a reader would call me out and be like, "Hey, the last 2 weeks you seem to be heavily focused on these topics," and I'm like, "Oh shit, that's really good feedback. Like
Yeah.
I need to be more well rounded," and then that forced me to. I had this app. I still use it actually. It's called Feedly. It's basically an RSS feed,
Mm.
and I would literally manage this thing every month. Like if I didn't get value from that publication or that news source, gone.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to see you again. And I would always like kind of prune this thing and trim it and like
A lot of curation.
a
That's
lot
all
of curation.
curation.
And then
Yeah.
because it really informs what I'm allowing into my mind.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm the one with the taste that goes, this is worth highlighting. This is not worth highlighting.
This is interesting. This is not.
interesting.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I'm genuinely glad that people found value from that because that was one of my favorite things it's the first thing I worked on every Monday.
And that's huge autonomy over that. I mean, that's.
Oh yeah, that
that's-
was
that's
that
a
was
big
a big response.
response.
Like even
Yeah.
like a broken URL like would literally shatter my
Of
heart.
course.
I'd be like, I'm
It would be the end of-
failure. Like,
No.
oh my god, I'm a
Be
loser
the end
now.
of the
Yeah.
day. Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, it's crazy because then I guess when you went to Collins, which I'm
Yeah.
doing a quick jump, that
Yep.
takes you into brands pretty
Oh my
quickly,
god,
right? Because
that was like
so Collins is a big brand agency,
Yeah.
and I actually shot during the pandemic. I shot at their offices, which is also
Amazing.
in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And Brian is a character
yes,
for sure, but he's also a master in
just
all of that.
everything,
Yeah.
strategy, storytelling.
Yeah.
I've never met someone who like he won't call himself a writer, but he absolutely is one. He will literally obsess over a verb for 20 minutes.
Well, it's important, right?
It's like a level of detail that
Yeah.
I just was never around.
yeah.
And so how we met was when I was leaving Creative Mornings, this was when Twitter was actually useful. When people are like do like the hey personal news, I'm blah blah blah, I'm
Mhm.
moving on, and if you know of anything, let me know. So I did like a little threaded tweet. It got a lot of retweets and people were supportive, and that's how he found me.
Oh wow.
And so he emails me, and it was like the most cryptic email. It was like all lowercase and just like, "Hey, we're working on something interesting." ... Would you like to know
course.
about it? ...
Yeah, that's-
It's like Brian Collins, Chief Creative Officer.
These are
I'm like,
the-
who the fuck is this guy? I honestly almost didn't respond, and then I responded, and I'm like, yeah, I'd love to have coffee. 30-minute coffee turned into like a 3-hour dinner.
Oh wow.
And what I realized was so growing up the way I did and the career I actually had a lot of friends that worked at design agencies. And, I would hear all the stories and I kind of
What
thought.
are the stories, Paul? What kind of stories are you referring to?
They're extremely intense environments.
Yes.
You're going to be most likely underpaid, overworked.
Yes.
It's like boot camp, basically. Like, and unfortunately, college does a really poor job of preparing you for those environments.
Absolutely.
So the real education is actually when you start interning at a design agency,
Right.
Because now you're dealing with clients, you're dealing with a boss that's under pressure.
Yeah.
You
Deadlines.
have deadlines,
Yeah.
and you don't have tech money, right?
Right.
You don't have infinite runway.
No.
So
you
like,
have whatever they'll give you.
exactly. And, so I actually never had that experience, and I always felt a little bit like, damn, I kind of wish I had that earlier in my life.
That's well.
Right?
Yeah.
But then Collins came really, I think, at the right time.
Yeah.
So I met Brian. We talked about big ideas. He told me his ambitions of how agencies are not good at telling their own stories.
That's true.
You go on an agency website, you look at their projects. It's just basically a wall of JPEGs, right? It's a case study that is much shinier than what the client often can execute.
Right.
And then you have this project description that every time I read it, I walked away going, who was that for?
Yeah.
Because that wasn't for me, the creative person, the designer who wants to learn from you, the agency,
Yeah.
on your philosophy, your process, whatever. It's just a lot of word salad.
It's tricky. Yeah. It's hard to figure out how. Well, so did Brian actually want you to remarket or work on marketing Collins? with
Pretty
him?
much.
Yeah.
Like basically like how do we tell our own stories? Like kind of the thing I learned was like, don't grow your garden in someone else's yard. And, Sean Blanda will say like, own your content, right? Like I
Yeah.
literally actually had a campaign on that at Creative Mornings. And it's like, it's true. It's just like the long game is you should want to build your own blog or publication.
You should.
Right? And like that's your work.
And that's tricky though if you are an agency or
Yes.
if you work in any kind of service industry.
Yes.
Really, to be able to do things that are content that you have any of your own agency or any of your own content, your own agency within your agency. You actually don't have
Yes.
a lot of that because a lot of the work you're doing comes from clients.
And
And you sign an NDA and you can't necessarily share
there you go.
a lot of the things that you're working on.
There you go.
Right?
That's the tricky part.
I
Is
know.
like especially when I got really involved with more client facing work,
Yeah.
this had to be negotiated where it was like, hey,
Did you
by
do
the
that
way,
negotiation?
I had help. My
Okay.
friend Corinne, who was formerly running the San Francisco office, she would be the one to kind of, because she had the relationship with the
Yeah.
client and said, hey, by the way, would you be interested in collaborating on a story that makes you look good, that makes that gives more framing and value to the work that we did together,
Mm.
that helps audiences understand like the value and impact of it, and it makes both of us look good, and it's something that most agencies don't do. I would say 9 out of 10 times the client was like, "Fuck yeah, let's do it." Like, cause like they weren't gonna do it,
Yeah.
and we're essentially just saying, "Hey, we're gonna do this for free. Like, we're not charging you extra. We're
We're
not
gonna do it
adding a line
anyway. It's
item,
smart.
to the scope of work.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you're gonna get a great story that you can share with the team,
Yeah.
right? And it just, cause like honestly, I every time I read a rebrand story from Fast Company, Ad Age, etc., I'm just like, you guys don't know how to tell these stories. Like, I don't think you guys know who your audience is. I don't know who this is for. And whenever I share it with an actual designer or creative director or a junior intern, none of them get value from it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I know how to talk to these people. I know how
Right.
to tell the right stories. And so I was very lucky to be able to walk into such an established agency where I had to be the mirror for them and go, guys, look at the fucking work that you have done, right? At the
Yeah.
time, it was like Spotify, Dropbox, Twitch, Nike, all these impressive brands. And I'm just like, but no one knows you. And like, no one knows how you did the work. There's this black box that exists in design. Are you willing to be the first one to sort of lift that black box up and
Yeah.
let people into your process, let them know what you were inspired by? And then could that, obviously, we have to think this way, could that drive more business?
Well, of course you have to think that way.
Right?
And yeah, and that's a really smart way to think about it because a lot of the time you don't know what anyone is doing. And so what separates agencies from other
There you
agencies? It's
go.
just, yeah,
And so it was a way to differentiate.
interesting.
And it was also, what I learned after talking to all the creative directors, because, all the creative directors at the time, they had been at Collins for so long. So they shaped that agency. And I would sit down with each of them and go kind of, hey, magic wand, right? Like, what do you wish existed? What kind of stories do you wish we could be telling? And what I realized just talking to them is, man, all these people internally had incredible ideas, but they just don't have the time to tell them. They're
Right.
just so busy working with 3, 4 clients at a time
Yeah.
every single week,
Yeah.
right? And so I was like, hey, then let me interview you. I'll turn that transcript into a story and let's get it published. And then I'll find a way to distribute it to the right
That's
channels
so,
and people.
yeah.
And literally, I remember the day of launch. And honestly, I thought this project was going to die because COVID hit.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. There's going to be no more money for this.
But this
But
was the best thing probably that happened,
the
right?
best thing
Because
ever.
there was no more content coming because there was no work.
Yeah. And there
Agency
was
work
like,
was,
and weirdly, it was also a moment like there was just so much, the acronym FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt. Like there was just so much of that going around.
yeah.
And I remember Brian was like, we need to be like the agency that gives people hope, and optimism. And I remember like we did that through a few ways. Like, God, it was so incredible.
But all the content was things that was video or was audio or
Both.
was right. So something that was easy to just watch or grab hold of. It wasn't anything that was live,
Yeah.
obviously. It
Super
wasn't
simple,
activation
easy to
stuff.
produce.
Yeah.
Like
Easy to distribute,
we literally
potentially.
had Richard Daney, the designer who designed the worm logo for NASA, get on a Zoom call and talk in front of 200-300 people about just like his work. But like that was in like the middle of COVID, right? And like
You might have not been able to get that guy though
no.
if COVID wasn't happening.
No,
Right?
and like we made sure like we like he was set up with tech. He understood how to use Zoom.
Yeah.
Brian like kind of emceed it, and like it was just like the feedback we got was not so much like, oh my God, I'm so inspired by NASA, and like everyone knows about that identity. It's more just like, wow, like I walked away feeling better than I did this morning. And it's just like, hey, if that was the outcome, I can live with that.
That's a
Like,
good.
you know what I mean? Like,
I
I'm
mean,
not
that's
trying
huge,
to,
and
yeah.
that's a lot different, right, than what it could be. Yeah, I mean that's actually amazing opportunity. So COVID, because you probably wouldn't have been able to do all that work or get all that much attention for that work in any other sort of space potentially.
Yeah,
If
that
there
was a
wasn't
rough
people,
time for agencies.
there was no work for
Yeah.
agencies and the budgets were gone.
Yep.
And so the only thing there was sort of video and audio content.
Yeah.
That was kind of it, and that
Yeah.
was a perfect project to
Yeah.
launch around that time. And I mean, when from those conversations, did you start getting understanding of brand, of power of design, of
Oh
all of that,
yes. Oh yes.
and sort of
So
informed you as someone who could create brand outside of agency, right?
yeah, so the after we launched, obviously like I was kind of like a one person show with like limited resources as all things like this are, right? Running a publication, editorial, whatever. That's when I started shifting more towards client work
Yeah.
because my really close friend Nick Ace, who's now the chief creative officer at Collins, he kind of like saw certain skills in me that I don't think anyone else maybe saw as much. And he's like, "Hey, why don't you come work with me on some of these client projects?" I'm like, "Okay, cool."
Yeah.
And he really valued that, I can listen to a CEO ramble for an hour and I can turn that into a manifesto.
Right.
I can turn that into a narrative that they can share internally
That's a superpower.
that I thank you. I mean, I didn't know that. Like the greatest compliment we ever got, and it's only happened twice, is there are times where we've presented a 300 slide deck in 20 minutes and had the whole room crying.
What was
That
that? What was that for?
like it was just like I'm not going to claim credit for this one, but I remember I was in the office and the team that worked on the rebrand for the Girl Scouts,
Mm.
Maddie, who's the copywriter, she's absolute fucking genius, like one of the best writers I've ever met. She wrote this manifesto and literally had the entire executive team in tears. Like,
Wow.
and I'm just like, that is design. Like, yes, writing was the vehicle for that, but the outcome, the emotional response of just words on a Google document or words beautifully laid out on an image makes a room cry because they feel seen and they feel that finally someone understands their point of view and what they're trying to achieve in the world better than they could have come up with. I'm like, that's a
Powerful.
job? Like that's a craft? I can do that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That's meaningful to me. And so um even when I presented the idea of, we called it Ideas, the platform, no one really cried, but literally the emails I got after and like people that approached me after, I had never felt so like welcomed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I felt like this outsider coming in and everyone knows like Brian like hires on a whim and suddenly this new person's in the office and he's introducing them to everyone and I'm not gonna lie, the vibe that I got initially was kind of just like, who the fuck are you?
Well,
You
that's
know?
always the
Like,
vibe,
oh,
right?
are you here for social media? Okay, cool. You're like the 10th person that he's hired to do this, right?
Yeah.
But like I didn't care. Like I knew that I knew my shit. I knew I was good at what I did, and I approached everything through curiosity. I
Yeah.
wasn't like going and going, we have to do X, Y, Z. It was more just like, hey, what is our opportunity here? You know what
Yeah.
I
What
mean?
can we
Like,
do with all of
because like
this?
'cause I'm gonna be real. Like, there was a moment where I definitely had like imposter syndrome and
Hmm.
kind of asked myself the hard question of, hey, is this actually the right thing for me right now? Like, do I actually have what it takes to deliver value for this agency, right? That's been around for 10
Well, I mean, it's
years.
similar when you were working for Creative Mornings and you were pulling content. Did you feel sort of that's also a very
Oh my
large
God, yeah.
responsibility too, right?
Yeah.
It's just sort of put on you to say like figure out what that is,
My
because
yeah, actually now it's funny thinking about it. Like my whole career has been just literally like make it up and do my
and we'll
best.
figure it out later,
Like
right? Like figure
yeah,
out what you're gonna
literally.
do. Well, I mean, because it sounds like you had a couple like sort of influential people that gave you the space to be able to do the work. That we all have sort of our
Yeah,
people
very
that
lucky
lift us
that way.
up,
Very
right?
lucky that way. Like if you think about it,
I mean, Jocelyn's one of mine, as
yeah,
we cited earlier, but just people that lift you up and see your value, is
yes,
super important in your career to be able to have
yes.
those people,
Yeah,
you
Sean
know?
was that for me,
Yeah.
especially early days where, again, I was just so intimidated. I again, I didn't grow up I think with a creative bone in my body. I played video games and I played football and sports and BMX, and like I never wrote or like did something. My parents didn't like push that on me.
Yeah.
And so having someone like Sean to be like, no, 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 like your writing is at the level of what we expect at
Well, that's helpful
99U,
for us to
right?
hear to hear that you could do it,
Yeah, it's
right?
like that encouragement, right? Like
Yeah.
that's all. Sometimes that's all you need
Yeah.
is like just that one person to give you that little bit of encouragement. You
And
walk through
then
that door and
and
you
then you've
never
set
come
your
back,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. There's a bunch of people in my life too
Like
that
I
did that.
remember
Yeah.
when Seth Godin reached out. Wes was the manager of the program, and she reached out saying, "Hey, we're putting together like this kind of small Marvel team to pilot this program and to build it." And when I got on that Zoom call, I'm like, "You're a neuroscientist. You're like some huge name in New York that runs New York libraries. Like all these
And
impressive
this is a pilot
people."
program that Seth put together?
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but it had a really great run. It was
Yeah.
called the Alt MBA, and it
Okay.
was like a 4 week intensive, really intense like workshop where like you're working with people on Zoom, and you're
Yeah.
making projects, and I'm sitting there going, the people I'm coaching are light years ahead of me in life.
But that's but
What am
that's
I
really
doing
but that's
here?
really inspiring. That's really, putting
Yeah.
you in situations where you're forced to perform or get
Literally.
there. Yeah.
And I don't know. I just again like I led with my heart. I led with curiosity. I used writing to have clear thinking
Yeah.
and have a clear plan and purpose. And I just tried my best. And like that was one of the most incredible also life experiences was building this thing that literally was just an idea in a document. Now all of a sudden you have 100 people on Zoom all around the world. 2 years later, you have 500 people on Zoom running multiple sessions.
Yeah.
Like we scaled it up, we hired more coaches. Like it was incredible
Oh my goodness.
to just experience that.
That sounds amazing. I mean, because then you've built up all these different things. And so now I just to see where you are
Yeah.
now, just to say where you are now. So, I mean, do you feel like, so now you're creative director, you're brand leader,
Yeah.
like, how do you, and you're working full time for for
Yeah.
a company.
Yep.
Do you feel like you're still building that, or are you continuing to push the brand? Because, how do you feel like now that you're in that position and you're experienced it,
Oh
and you see
man.
sort of looking from the other side of it,
It's
right?
it's it's like the world is moving so fast now. Like when I was doing rebrands at Collins with an amazing team, um, that was when like even the attitude of rebrands were changing, right? So back in the past, a company would rebrand every 10 years, like literally. Now it's like they rebrand every 2 to 3, maybe 5 years,
Really?
right? Because they just have to keep up with the times.
Yeah.
Like the importance of culture has never been more important for branding. Whereas like brands in the past, let's say before the internet era, you can build a brand like a Coca-Cola just by doing good advertising,
Right.
right? And getting your name out there, right?
Yeah.
More money equals more advertising equals more awareness,
Yeah.
and you win the game that way. Whereas now, I think brands can be built up and shut down faster than ever
Just
before.
based on people that, or just, is it a micro influencer sort of thing? Is it like a social thing?
I
Do you
think
feel
it's like
like
a
it's,
social thing. Like,
yeah.
just people are more aware. They find more identity and belonging in
Do you
branding.
feel like that's gone away, that companies are investing less in community though now than they were before? Because I find that tech companies are
Yeah.
sometimes doing that
I think
in
tech
favor.
companies still don't understand what community is. Most don't.
Right.
They think they call their customer base community. That's where you fuck up right away. It's
Yeah.
like, no, that's not your community. Those are
Right.
people who pay for your product,
Yeah.
right? Community is self-organized. It's self-initiated.
Mm.
It's almost self-funded in its own way. Like these people are going to gather with or without you.
Right.
What is your role as a company? Like how are you uplifting this community to be better?
Yeah.
The best example that I can think of right now is Cash App.
Okay.
So Cash App compared to Venmo, compared to PayPal, compared to Zelle, they're four products that do the exact same thing. You send money, you save money, you spend money, you transfer money. But Cash App, how they positioned themselves differently was They focused on low income neighborhoods that don't have access to banking,
Yeah.
like poor neighborhoods, and they built products for them that actually work and make their lives better. And then when they do a brand campaign, they use people that that community looks up to, right? Serena Williams, Odell Beckham Jr., Kendrick Lamar, et cetera, et cetera. So they are not extracting community, they are actually uplifting them and
Yeah.
like supporting them in a very authentic, natural way. That is like one out of 1,000 examples that's actually doing it right. I still,
That's a great example
yeah,
though, because it does seem like you have to reach in and
yes.
actually look
Because
and
like
do
if
the.
PayPal tried to suddenly use hip hop as a way in,
Oh well, then I
you're
wouldn't.
gonna get torn apart.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And
And
so,
did you think that took research on Cash App's,
oh, I
sort of,
bet,
yeah,
I
they did some
bet,
research on
yeah,
who maybe used their stuff or
yeah.
like which community needed the help or
Yep.
sort of they did their sort of their homework
Yep.
in getting
Like
it
like
together,
my
right?
generation used Venmo because, no one knew how to split checks,
Right.
right, at
Yeah,
restaurants. But
exactly.
my brother, who's 7 years younger than me, they don't even think about Venmo. It's Cash App only,
Right.
right? And it's
Yeah.
like that's how they were raised. And so Cash App did a really good job of understanding who they're trying to change, but more importantly, they were consistent.
Yeah.
Like so many brands like will try to like join a community, they'll end up like, taking advantage of them and then they'll disappear and just go find another community.
Right.
And it's just like, look, that's
I
not
mean, it's obvious and you
it's
can see
so
it and
obvious.
people kind of track that and folks are sensitive to stuff like that,
And I
right?
think
So,
I think like, people like us, especially in this room, like we're definitely sensitive to that because we're in the front of the roller coaster, right? We're
yeah.
in the industry living it.
Yeah.
My friends in the suburbs who aren't on Twitter, don't read TechCrunch, don't know what the fuck a Substack is,
Yeah.
like they're now catching up.
Right.
And so now like the middle of the bell curve is way more informed and smarter and they're going to call out bad branding because especially in the middle of the bell curve like those brands are so deeply rooted into like your identity. Like the beer you drink,
Yeah.
right? Is like if you show me a beer you drink, I can probably pinpoint what kind of environment you live in.
Yeah.
Like Miller Lite versus Coors Light versus a Corona,
All
right?
right.
Like I bet
All
you
right.
like enough.
So if you like a Corona, I'm just testing
Right.
you.
You probably, I mean, you could be in the suburbs, but like, you're probably like in a warmer climate like Florida
Or
or
do you want to
LA.
be? Or you think
Or
that
do you want to, right?
yeah,
Or
you're like
like
you're manifesting something
versus
like
like,
that.
the Coors Light drinkers, like to me, I just think of the kids I grew up with.
Right.
The frat houses,
Yeah.
right? The college campuses, because it's
Yeah.
like cheap water beer, right?
Yeah. But people are very loyal to their brands. Is that an
Oh, yeah.
American thing? Or do you think that that's because you're also the company you work for now is a European company?
Yeah, German company.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you finding that there's a different brand loyalty?
Huge.
Because the thing that was funny when I started going over to Europe, which is just a stupid American thing, I
Yeah.
would just call things by their brand name.
Yeah.
What did I do? Like Cheerios,
Yeah.
like Kleenex.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize that
Yeah.
was what I was doing until
Yep.
someone's like, do you mean tissue? Like,
Yep.
what are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
Like we talk in brands and we don't even realize that we do that.
So doing a rebrand at a German company has
Yeah.
definitely had tons of learning experiences. There is definitely like, especially with American designers or brand people, like there is definitely this kind of like American exceptionalism, like even rebrands with American companies, they're ready to go full gung ho, just like, yes, let's live this. Whereas, like with European companies, it's especially with the German audience, it's hey, give me the facts first.
Right.
I don't want to hear your big manifesto story. I don't give a fuck
It's a
about that.
data.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
give me the facts, give me customer testimonials,
Right.
give me validation, and then I'm willing to take a risk.
Right.
Whereas American companies, they're just like, oh, that sounds visionary. That sounds interesting. That sounds different. Okay, all in.
Let's do all
Let's
of that.
do it. We're
And
just
what's-
going in.
Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
there's no anything else underneath that
No.
usually, right? So if
No.
you start to dig in underneath, there's none of that research, none of those facts, none of
Yeah.
those things
Yeah.
are there. So you're actually kind of creating something that's a little more of a data-driven brand, right? That's like as you're putting the information out there, the branding is a little bit more around information potentially.
Yeah, like this rebrand, honestly, has been such a gnarly project because beyond just brand, like I'm also learning how product gets developed, like software products.
Yeah.
And we, from the beginning, said, hey, look, Most rebrands, I would say, are just a fancy paint job. You
Right.
change the logo, you change the color, you change the type, you change illustration, right? You change the wrapper of the car, but you're not changing the driver and the engine,
Right.
right? Whereas this one, I luckily, shout out to that research team. I walked in with a research team that had amazing customer data, from ethnograph research to why people buy or don't buy, to what are the emotional strings that piss them off or make them happy. Then,
That's a
we
huge
oh
asset.
my God, because like every other rebrand that I've done, I was either that
You were having to.
fake researcher trying to get input,
Yeah.
right? And ask the right questions, but I am not a researcher. Like, I can't do what they do. And then you do the whole typical process, like stakeholder interviews. You interview the co-founders, you
Right.
interview the top customers, you interview all the execs, right?
Yeah.
And then you take all this word salad of input and you try to create something cohesive, rational, different, unique in its own way.
Yeah.
And so from the beginning, the brand strategy was informed by customer research, and my first moment of insight. So it's an HR company. HR is viewed very differently in Europe than it is in America.
Is it viewed well? Is it
It's
viewed better?
much better.
Right,
Like
correct.
in like, the running jokes of HR in the US are like, they protect the company, not the people, right? They're seen as kind of like the fire department, the principal's office. Like, if HR shows up, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Whereas in Europe companies, not everyone feels that.
Okay.
That is not the cultural attitude.
Yeah.
And so that was like a big thing I had to realize. But I remember, like, when I looked at all this research, the first kind of words I wrote was humans aren't resources, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the word HR is quite disgusting. And the other terms I've heard around it, human asset, human capital, like,
Ugh,
what
gross.
the fuck? Like, capital, like,
Like-
the thing I spend, like, that's what you're describing humans as. And so there was even like this language, like most rebrands I've also realized is there's always a language issue.
Yeah.
Always. There's always some, whether it's finance, like the Robinhood rebrand that I was lucky to be a part of. One of the main challenges there was like, hey, this group of institutions that have existed for 50 to 100 years all use esoteric bullshit language to scare the customer away,
Yeah.
right? An opportunity for Robinhood was to speak plainly,
Yeah.
right? So similarly with this German company, like, and this HR company, one of the first beliefs I wrote for the brand was humans are not resources, right? And if we truly believe that, how differently would we design
That's such
our
a
products?
good, yeah. I mean, and that's a system design note,
Yeah.
right? That's a note of system design. We have been talking, and I have so many more questions for you. Well, I want to ask you about, in relation to AI, what do you think about what's going on with that? What do you think about it taking over? Do you feel like the AI is actually going to be able to become creative enough? Because I don't know if an AI would think about that same sort of tagline.
Right,
Because
right.
that line that you just spat out, which was brilliant.
thank you.
Well, no, it's just, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It's like what it would be. Would an AI necessarily think of that?
I like recently wrote this down. This is like for my personal note. So, the show, the TV show Andor? It's a Star Wars spinoff.
I do not.
Okay, well, for those that are listening, I'm sure any Star Wars fans, they know that is one of the best Star Wars expressions that's come out of Disney. When AI can make something that good, or AI can make The Lord of the Rings, and at the end of the credits, I don't know that it was AI, that by the credits it said this was made by AI, I'll pack up everything
So is
and
that
go into the
show,
forest.
for reference, that's a completely AI Star
No, it wasn't made by AI. What I'm saying is, when AI gets that good, that's when I will leave this industry and
Okay.
quit.
But
Like,
it's-
I
but
will,
we're not-
but we're not there yet.
We have some time.
We're not there yet. So my thoughts on AI, I guess the long of it is I fucking love it.
Because it helps you.
I think it's the greatest. Like, look, I have friends that won't use it because of ethical concerns, and I can destroy that argument right away. I can look at your shoes and go, you wear Nikes, in your pocket is an Apple iPhone, and in your wallet are 5 different credit cards. Don't begin with me about data stealing and ethics
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
'Cause it's
Like,
all over,
that's
right?
bullshit.
Yeah,
Like,
it's-
look, AI the way AI was made, sure, is questionable. It's unethical in many ways. It's scraped data from publications and artists. Sure, that has all happened.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to turn that boat around.
No.
So the question is more like, how are we moving forward and finding good ways of using this tool? At the end of the day, it's just another tool.
Yeah.
Like in the same way that when I wrote Connect the Dots, I'm like, oh, wow, the internet is a knowledge gathering machine. We should be using this more. Similarly, AI is now an even advanced version of that. And I genuinely think we're in the dial up phase of AI right now. I have tried to learn coding for 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
I have spent hundreds of dollars on sprints, workshops, Skillshare courses, and it never fucking clicked ever. I can go as far as HTML, CSS.
Yeah.
Over the break in December, I started playing with this app called Cursor. And by 3-4 weeks, I had built 4 different apps that I imagined in my mind that I can now interact with either on the browser or in Figma.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going,
That's
holy fucking shit.
a
Like
game changer.
this
yeah.
is this completely amplifies my core set of skills in ways that I can't even foresee right now, right? Like cuz like look, I try to break AI. Like I use everything from Claude to ChatGPT to Perplexity to DeepSeek.
You jump all around.
I will put the same prompt in 4 different chat
and you want to see
windows.
what will happen, right?
And then like I'll take my own writing and I'll see if it can generate something that is 90% there.
It's similar. Yeah.
At the end of the day, like what matters is like taste, right? Expertise, like being able to discern.
to look at what it's spitting out and be able
And
to.
is it good?
Yeah, is it good? And is it because you're actually adding your taste level to it?
Yep.
There's still creativity that needs to happen.
Yep.
You know, I think if you think about it as a tool, then it's a little bit less scary.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And like I also think like, I think a lot of the current outrage is actually quite privileged. Like
Agreed.
who I'm thinking about is the kid, like, so where I grew up,
That's a
like
really good note, actually, because
like it's like how does this flatten power?
Well, because
right?
it's not gonna replace job. Like it's not gonna create replace manpower. For
Right.
example, I spoke to a friend of mine who's an audio engineer, and he said, well, it's not gonna replace my job. It's also they can't build an audio system, right?
Right.
Like it's
Right.
not gonna replace absolutely everything, and it is a privilege. You're right. It's privilege to be able to say, oh God, all of our jobs are going to AI.
Yeah.
Because that's not true. It's in certain fields that things are going to be changing.
And maybe that's good, right?
Right.
Because like so many of these systems that have existed were built in an old world. Like the DMV we know is fundamentally broken, right? The airport process is broken. Like AI should be able to fix these things. Like I'm trying to see it through like the optimistic lens of like who is the person that doesn't have a fighting chance to build the life on their own terms because they're in the wrong environment that has no support, doesn't have the right mentors, doesn't have access to tutoring, but suddenly maybe their school gives them a ChatGPT license. Now you have the world's knowledge at your fingertips. Now you have someone that can help you copy edit, that can help you analyze a 100-page PDF, that can help you start coding.
Right.
Those are the people that I'm trying to think of in terms of like, we need to help those people.
Yeah.
Like the people that work in tech that live in LA and New York and San Francisco, you're fine. Like you're in the
You'll
1% of
figure
the
it out.
entire world.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
But
right.
like, how are we going to uplift the underdogs? How are we going to uplift the people who are sort of left behind?
Yep.
Because school's not going to save you.
No.
Government's not going to save you.
Not anymore.
Your
Never.
parents are doom scrolling TikTok.
Yeah.
Like it's like how does that kid? I think about me like in your room, inside your head, there's a voice saying, "Hey, I think you can live a great life, right? I think you're capable of doing great things, right? But you don't know how, right? Can this
You
tool,
give them the tools to be able to do that.
right, be
Yeah.
that spark?"
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, I'm like, those are the stories I wish can get highlighted. Like, yeah, the Studio Ghibli stuff was like cute and sad at the same time, when everyone was recreating that artwork on Twitter. But like, like that's just like a small little thing, you
It's
know?
not. Yeah.
Like I'm thinking more long term, like how does
How is
this
this going to help? How
yeah,
is this
how
going
is
to
it
help
going to
us?
amplify skills? Like the
Yeah.
fact that I'm coding stuff and prototyping things even at work genuinely gets me excited, you know?
Yeah.
And I
This
can
is
only imagine what that's going to do for people who have enormous ambitions but feel very constrained by their environment.
That is a very good take
Yeah.
on that. That's an important take to be able to talk about. Do you feel we have a few, we've been talking for a long time, but I feel like sort of the wrap up then
This
it
went
should
so fast.
I know it went so fast. I didn't get through most of my questions. It means we're gonna have to do a two-parter.
All right, I'm down.
Maybe. I
I'm
don't know.
down.
But I mean, I guess the takeaway would be like how do we reach if we're because I think that that's a really important point that you don't hear a lot about that like how can the tech reach people? How can the tech reach people that need it, right? How can this
Yeah.
AI reach people? What do you think would be the way, if we're brainstorming off the top of our head, how would we be able to share the technology of AI with people that need that? What do you think?
I think it's a great question. I've been thinking about this a lot. I think there's a few ways. So, for example, if I think about myself, right, if it wasn't for the Seth Godins of the world who publish their stories and their life on blog, I would have never seen that as a path. So
Right.
similarly, then I need to then, and people like us need to tell the stories optimistically about how we are able to do things we've never been able to do before. I want that 20-year-old kid, that 15-year-old kid to see those stories on TikTok or wherever and go, wait a minute, that's possible. They're not talking about this in school.
Right.
Then what do those kids do? They tell their friends about it.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they might be learning together.
Right.
And suddenly they might be building a startup on the weekend together.
Mm.
And now suddenly you don't have to go work at fucking some bank, right?
Or
And
KFC or whatever.
right. And do ketamine to fucking solve your trauma. Like it's like, no, you can like, you know what I mean? Like you can lead a different life,
Yeah.
right? And like, look, it's not gonna be easy.
Well, you can lift yourself up. I mean, the new sort of American dream bit is going to come from this.
Yeah, and
Right?
there's gonna be such look the career games that we've been told and have read in books. All of that has been just completely washed away.
Yeah.
There's this whole new future of work, future of collaboration.
Yeah.
I think the next billion-dollar startup is going to be made by 5 people, not 500 people.
Yeah.
I think those futures are exciting because that increases competition.
Yeah.
It takes power away from the big that
Yes.
continuously fucks the small.
Absolutely.
And we need to see a world where those divides start to close a little bit tighter because right now it is so top heavy.
It's such a vast gulf between it.
Literally.
Right? That we need to find some way to bridge it. And we
Literally.
should use the tech that's being created to potentially
Yeah.
do that.
And I
mean,
really think like maybe like closing thought is like I've been thinking like okay, if AI can do most of these things, right? It can produce, it can code, it can organize your to-do list, it can give you an itinerary to, Italy for 2 weeks effortlessly better than a travel agent can, then what matters, right?
Yeah.
I wrote down like a few things this morning. It's like, well, one, the self-education thing.
Yeah.
Can you muster the desire and curiosity to be frustrated? It's not learn because learning is a byproduct of frustration. It's like, do you have the resilience to, in a way, suffer? Because you're going to learn things you don't know. You're going to expose your own incompetence. You're going to expose your own ignorance.
You're going to feel vulnerable.
That's very painful.
Yeah,
Right? Because like
absolutely.
life guards you from that.
Well,
School guards you from that.
And it's easier to be lazy and not do that.
Yes.
Right? Apathy. Avoid apathy.
I'm so big on that right now. Is
Yeah.
like I anything that elicits apathy, I'm like, fuck that. I don't want to hear it. Second thing, sanity. Can you protect yourself from brain rot, doom scroll, outrage porn, engagement baiting, any of this bullshit that I see on Twitter? Like literally, I see grown men that are probably multimillionaires acting like fucking drunk high school kids on Twitter. It's disgusting.
Well,
It's like, can you protect yourself from that? Because there's a big cohort of people that look up to that and go, I want to be that guy.
Well, that's who.
That's what success
that's
looks
what
like.
swayed the election. But
There you go, right?
Yeah.
So like sanity, self-education, and I think more important than ever is community. Do you have a group of people, right? a round
Or
table.
how can you build community?
Yeah, how can you build
I think
community?
that's what
How can
everyone's
you
because
find
there's
those
this
like
isolation
minds?
crisis,
Oh my
right?
God. And it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. You're going to have a lot of these kids talking to fucking robots, thinking that, that's a connection.
And that's the scary thing about AI, and that's the way to avoid.
That's the dark side of AI,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like whenever I saw, what was it, the CES convention, it was like, like sex robots made by dudes with like ponytails. I'm like, oh, fucking the ponytails. It's always the ponytails.
It's always the guys with
And I'm just like, this is what people spend their time on. Like, we need the opposite of that,
Yeah.
right? And I really hope that the world doesn't end up in shit because of this tool. I actually hope that we kind of swing it in the other way.
Let's call to
you know?
action. Anyone that's listening, let's create an initiative.
Yeah.
To try to not let that happen.
And weirdly, having a community where you learn these tools together is actually going to accelerate learning faster versus trying to do it in your room alone.
Yeah.
And so even on weekends, I try to gather a couple people and go, hey, let's go to like this hotel lobby. Let's hang out for 2-3 hours.
Yeah.
And let's just learn this shit.
Yeah, so maybe it's learning cohorts again. Maybe that's sort of education pods or whatever.
Yeah.
That would be a good way to go.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, this went really fast. It was great talking to you.
This is so amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Where can people find you? Do you want to talk about is there anything you want people to follow on you?
My site, pauljun.me. I'm on Instagram, Paul Junbear. I mean, I'm kind of only on those two places. But yeah.
Your site's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, all right. Thanks so much.
Oh, amazing.
I'm your host, Nikki Frankel, saying if you do what you love, you never work a day. The show is created by Preview Media. Our producers are Eleni Silos and Stevan Blashki. Technical support and editing by Tori Yako and Jasmine Jackson. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and those around you.